Every week, college football games hinge on a single word.
Touchdown. Touchdown, Texas. Touchdown, Oklahoma. Touchdown. Touchdown. Touchdown, Wisconsin. Touchdown. 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 Touchdown, Stanford. Touchdown. Touchdown, Alabama. Touchdown, Notre Dame. Touchdown. Wow.
This is Touchdown Radio. Here's Gino Torretta and Taylor Zarzour.
Happy week 9 of the college football season, the last weekend in October. Next week, we will be talking about games happening in November, Gino. We keep saying it each year we do this. It's just wild how fast it goes.
Well, there's no question. But listen, it is college football has delivered. I think it's probably delivered in different ways. There's been some surprising teams, both on the good and the bad. There has been probably more firings of head coaches so far this season than we've seen in a long time, maybe ever, and probably that's not going to stop between now and the end of the season. So, but it has delivered. There's been great games, and it's been absolutely just a lot of fun to be a part of all of them, to be honest.
Last Friday, I went on SEC This Morning on SEC Network with Chris Doering and Peter Burns, and the first question Chris asked me last Friday morning was, who do you think the best team in college football is? And I said, the Miami Hurricanes. That night, they lost to the Louisville Cardinals, 24-21. Carson Beck threw 4 interceptions in the game. It's not a shot at Miami. Maybe it's a shot at me. But
apparently you weren't listening to us do the show when you asked me 3 games.
I did, and you said yes.
Shot of getting upset.
Yes, I did Miami. Listen to you, but it wasn't that I didn't think Louisville had a chance to win the game. It's just I thought Miami was the best team last Friday morning, and they certainly didn't play like it. Look, Louisville deserved to win the game and beat Miami in Miami 24-21. But I think the reason I'm bringing this up and making fun of myself here is I don't think anybody really knows who the best team in college football is. Now, if you want to say Ohio State won the national championship last year. They're undefeated this year. I wouldn't necessarily argue with you. Probably deserve to be ranked number 1. Indiana is, I would think, by most people's judgment, would be the next team at number 2. Maybe you put Indiana number 1. Alabama looks like they're playing the best of anyone, but you have to penalize them for that loss to Florida State in week number 1. But the point I'm making is I think we have as much parity as we've ever had in college football. And I think that's why the ratings are astronomical, is because as many things that we'd like to change about college football, the transfer portal and how much money these kids are making and the firings and just how big of a business it's turned into, maybe too big of a business for amateur sports, I do love how unpredictable the games are on Saturday.
Well, no question. And it's just the interest because, listen, if your alma mater has a chance of winning now as opposed to in the past, you're kind of, let's see, as we end October, a lot of schools in the past, maybe we're waiting on basketball season. We're about to start and we're getting prepared for that. But now all of a sudden your football team has made a turnaround and obviously there's interest. I think, like you said, you mentioned all these teams, whether they're no loss or one loss, is, they have a chance. And I think that's been great. I think it's great for the game because you're like, wow, can this team do it? And whatever reason it is, I would say even, I don't know if it's our lack of attention span in today, or kids' attention span, but teams aren't doing very well when they go on the road, whether it's lack of focus or, hey, it's harder on the road. You think a team's favored and they're on the road and they don't perform as well. But whatever it is, it's hard every week across the board for these coaches to get these kids focused on this game. And, oh, by the way, that team does have a chance to beat you, because a lot of times those words at the, when you're preparing and a coach is like, this team is good, and listen, I'm watching film and I'm like, Coach, this team isn't any good. You can't feed me a line of crap. but now it's like, hey, this team can beat you with the right plan. And like I say, the best teams are the ones that if they don't have their A game like Tiger Woods, and they're still able to beat you. And however a coach has to do to get that out of his team every single week are the ones that are undefeated or maybe just one loss, and the ones that are the best at doing their job right now.
We had 4 teams lose in the top 10. 5 of the top 11 lost last week, and I bet that song will remain the same for most of the weeks to come here in college football. We mentioned Miami's loss to Louisville last Friday night, 24-21. A few games to reference on Saturday, Gino. I'm interested to see which one you were most intrigued by. LSU was ranked 10th, lost at number 17 Vanderbilt in Nashville, 31-24. Commodores are hosting College Game Day and the Missouri Tigers this Saturday. Number 5 Ole Miss controlled most of the first half. Georgia, as they do almost every week, controlled the second half. And the Dogs beat Ole Miss in Athens 43-35. Then number 7 Texas Tech, first loss of the season, comes at Arizona State 26-22. Alabama beat Tennessee in Tuscaloosa 37-20. The big play was Xavier Brown's pick 6 right before the half when Tennessee looks like they're about to go in to score, and it's going to be a 2-point game at halftime. Instead, it was a 16-point game at halftime. Of those games, anything intrigue you the most?
Well, I just think that the constant of Georgia and the belief that that team has that they're going to win. They can be playing horrendously against Auburn in the first half, and there's no flinch. And then this week against Ole Miss, there were the first 11 drives of that game ended in scores. Ole Miss had the ball 5 times, 5 touchdowns. Georgia had it 6 times. They scored every time. I think they had 2 field goals. And it was just, okay, back and forth. Neither defense is going to stop. Ole Miss comes out right after half, throws a hitch, broken tackle to the house, and all of a sudden they're up by, I think it was 8 at that point in time. And it looked like they were on the way. And then Stockton comes out, plays lights out, and they're very methodical in their approach, in their play. And it's kind of, they never let their heart rate get up. When you're nervous and you're like, you're on a golf course or whatever, and you're like, just calm down, just play. And that's what I've been most impressed about Georgia. The other thing, Texas A&M keeps kind of playing with fire.
Yes.
Gave up a ton of huge plays against Arkansas. And as well as I do, they cannot do that continually and make it through the season unscathed.
No, they can't, and somehow survived in Fayetteville 45-42. They have to go to Baton Rouge on Saturday night to play LSU, who's a bit wounded now with 2 losses, but could get back in the college football playoff conversation with a win this week. They are 5-2, but I certainly think 2 lost teams will, at least from the SEC, make it into the college football playoff. So I think the big question at the end of the year will be, are there 3 lost teams? We're going to get to that conversation coming up in just a minute. One more thing to ask you about. You mentioned all the changes in coaching. We've had something to say about this each week, and that continues. Florida beats Mississippi State 23-21 and then fires Billy Napier the next day as their head coach. We could see this coming for quite some time. We've been talking about Billy Napier and his job security for over a year. I'm always uncomfortable doing that, especially when it comes to somebody that is so well respected. Anyone that's ever spent a minute with Billy Napier would say, man, I really like that guy. And these are hard decisions to make, Gino, especially in this day and time. But what'd you think of the Gators' decision to part ways with Napier?
My thought is like you said, when it happened, they win the game, and then the decision's made. My thought was that decision was made a long time ago.
No doubt.
And I don't know when.
Yeah.
But, I think that when Miami played Florida, and talking to a lot of Florida folk up in the press box and it wasn't a matter of if he was going to be fired. It was a matter of when, and they were waiting, at least the Florida brass was waiting for after the 3 or 4 game window where a player could opt out of the season and basically redshirt. They were waiting past that to make sure that they wouldn't have a mass exodus of players from this season and players that would sit out. So I think the decision was made a long time ago. And listen, it is a high pressure job. There's been very successful coaches in that job. They have won national championships in that job. I believe Strickland has hired the last 2 head coaches. Am I correct in that? He's hired he hired the last one.
Right.
So I will be curious to see what happens going forward on, what that next head coach looks like. And is it a revamping? I think that when you look at these programs, it's almost got to be a new model of, you have to have the personnel departments. I see it. These colleges aren't recruiting high school kids anymore. They're essentially just scouring other college programs and trying to get transfers that are already, 20, 21 years old, that they don't have to sign an 18-year-old kid and let him develop into a player. And it's just kind of a different model right now.
It is, and Strickland did hire, I guess, technically did hire Dan Mullen, who he worked with at Mississippi State, and now, of course, then worked at Florida with. I don't know that Scott ultimately made that decision by himself, just like all general managers, just like all athletic directors these days. But yes, he did hire the last 2. We'll see who the next guy is. I'll go ahead on record and say I'll be shocked if it's Lane Kiffin. I know everybody thinks it's going to be Lane or he's the number 1 choice. I'd be shocked if it is. Lane and his family are as happy as they've ever been in Oxford, Mississippi. These are the best days, the most stable days of Lane Kiffin. So I just I almost would be disappointed if Lane Kiffin took that job. Just being around him recently and just seeing how happy he and his family are there. We'll see what happens with that. We have plenty of time to talk about it, Gino, in the weeks to come. What I want to ask you about is we always like to beat the band on the college football playoff committee, which includes Ole Miss legend Wesley Walls on the committee. Shout out to Wesley this year.
Wesley gets more play on Touchdown Radio Tailgate than anybody.
I'm just so excited that he's on the committee now and he has to make tough decisions because Wesley's not a front-facing guy, and I love to rattle his cage a little bit. He's taken so much of my money on the golf course. The least I can do is try to give him some shout-outs here. But those guys don't have to make they are not releasing a poll for a couple of weeks. We're releasing one now, though. So in the next segment, we're going to go over what I think would be the college football playoff right now, and I want to get your pushback to it. Later on, we'll go through these games. Rough week for Torretta last week with the picks. Man, he had the lead going into the week, and now he's 3 behind as the week is over.
Oh, my goodness. It was that bad? I knew the 2 SEC games got me.
Yep, you had a rough one. We both lost with Nebraska. I won with Vandy. You picked LSU. We both picked OU. We both picked A&M. I picked Georgia. You took Ole Miss. We both picked Boise. We both lost with Texas Tech. Both won with Alabama. I had Notre Dame. You're not allowed to pick Notre Dame. I picked Utah. I took BYU. You took Utah in the Holy War. So there we go. As it stands right now. All right, we'll get to those picks later on, but I want to talk about the top 12, and we'll do that next on Touchdown Radio Tailgate. All right, Gino, coming up in just a minute, I'm going to give you my top 12, what I think the standings would look like right now. Before we do that, I'm interested to know, you don't have to rank all 12, but I'm just interested to know, just off the top of your head, who you think the best 2 or 3 teams are in college football.
I think Ohio State. I think I would take Georgia over Alabama. I've seen them twice. I know Alabama might be playing a little bit better. I'm torn. I really think the top 5 are pretty good how they're ranked right now. Ohio State, I think Indiana with Signetti, I think they believe they can beat anybody. Maybe A&M's got some chinks in the armor after giving up all those big plays. But I'd probably say Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, and Indiana are pretty good top 4.
Now, you would rank, say, an Alabama or a Georgia who each have a loss, Alabama losing, which is turned into a bad loss to Florida State at the start of the season, Georgia lost to Alabama. You would rank those teams ahead of undefeated Texas A&M.
Well, I'm maybe that's me projecting a little bit of where Texas A&M is one of those teams you got to kind of hold your breath watching them because of giving up those big plays. And I would just foresee as we continue down the road, that's gonna hurt them. And I would probably say at this point in time, they will have some losses by the end of the season.
Okay. So here we go with what I think right now would be the college football playoff. It will be my college football playoff rankings. These isn't a prediction of what I think the committee will do. I still think it's way too much up in the air, and we don't have any clarity on how you would evaluate teams really like 7 through the rest of the rankings. I mean, it's obviously in the eye of the beholder, and I think we're going to hear at least college football insiders, people that really love the sport and pay attention to it all the time. I think you're going to hear a lot of complaining about certain rankings here in a couple of weeks because it's going to be an unfinished product. But I would have Ohio State number 1. I'd have Indiana number 2. I think Texas A&M deserves to be ranked number 3. Now, if you pick them to lose to Alabama or Georgia, I'd understand that. But they're undefeated. To me, they deserve to be ranked ahead of Alabama and Georgia. I would have A&M number 3. Now, this is where it gets interesting because I think after that, I just said Texas A&M deserves to be ranked above Alabama. Do I think Georgia Tech or BYU deserve to be ranked ahead of Alabama? I don't. Alabama just beat 4 consecutive teams that are ranked in the top 25. The SEC has never had a team do that before. I'd have the Tide 4. I'd have Georgia Tech 5, and I'd have Georgia 6. That'd be my 4, 5, 6. Then it's interesting, too, because Oregon lost at home to Indiana. That's a great loss, even though it was at home. I'd have them at 7, ahead of Vanderbilt, who lost on the road to Alabama, and that was a closer game than the score would reflect. I'd have Vandy at 8. I'd have Ole Miss at 9. Oklahoma at 10, Gino. Undefeated BYU is down at 11. There's my Big 12 team all the way down at 11. I've got my top ACC team at 5, and I've got BYU down at 11. And then I've got the Group of 5 team at number 12, South Florida. And you may be saying, where are the Miami Hurricanes? Miami's not in my rankings right now if I were to fill them out.
Nor is Notre Dame. You might hear a louder for that one.
Yeah, Notre Dame has 2 losses. Miami only has 1. And people may say, gosh, Taylor, how can you not have Miami in here? Well, I mean, honestly, I know OU lost to Texas. So if you wanted to say Miami belongs ahead of OU, I could listen to that. But I have OU in front of Miami right now. But Miami's loss at home to Louisville is a bad one. I realize Louisville's ranked in the top 20, but the way Miami played in that game, how poor they were on offense, all the turnovers. I mean, I think you have to.
Louisville wasn't ranked at the time.
Exactly. I think you have to really penalize the Canes for that. So you're going to get a lot of arguments here about who deserves to be ranked where, but those would be my incomplete rankings right now.
I would say this. I like those rankings, and I think you have a valid point for all those rankings. I think if somebody's trying to do this at home, to me, what I would probably start with is, okay, who's the Big 12 representative and who's the Group of 5?
And remember, Gino, you're not reseeding these teams like we did last year, which to me had to be changed, and it is changed, which is a great change, by the way.
Right. But I would say, like when you're picking the 12, it's almost like I would pick the bottom 2 and say these 2 are in no matter what. Okay, is that kick somebody out? Yeah, based on BYU and based on USF, who's that going to bump? That would, just like last year, where Ole Miss got bumped, Miami got bumped, Alabama got bumped, is that bumps Notre Dame and Miami out of the bottom two based on how you rank. And I think that's a valid point. I think that you should get penalized more for home losses. There's not a question. And I think that how Miami played now as the season goes on, it's like Notre Dame's strength has helped Miami because they obviously beat them at home. If Louisville continues to win, then that will help Miami. Even South Florida. I mean, Miami dominated South Florida, so that will even help Miami. But I think you make a valid point, but you also point out that it is really hard to do this, and there are different views in that room of what that ranking is going to be. It's almost like the end of the year when we start talking about the Heisman and who you're going to vote for in this, and people think, oh, it's easy to vote for the Heisman. You know what? You get a ballot with 3 empty lines, and it is not easy because there are a lot of things that go into how you're going to decide how your vote goes, and you can pick whoever you want. Like, people are like, hey, coach, is so-and-so up for the Heisman? I'm like, everybody's up for the Heisman. And people are floored. They're like, what do you mean? You don't have to pick just the people, somebody on TV's talking about? I'm like, no, you can pick anybody in college football that you think is the most outstanding player. And it's a lot harder than I guess election day, whether you have one side or the other side and you're picking one. So, but I like your rankings, and the one thing I would say is, you know what, the best part about college football is November games, and we're going to get a lot of great games that are going to shake up what your rankings are right now.
And listen, again, these are my rankings. They're not the committee's rankings. I can try to predict what I think the committee's rankings would be, but here's what. Let me just tell you, if my rankings were the top 12, where these games would be. So Ohio State, Indiana, Texas A&M, and Alabama would get the byes right now if the season ended right now today, in my world, okay? And then 5 through 12 would play each other. We have some interesting matchups here too, by the way. Number 5, Georgia Tech versus number 12, South Florida in Atlanta. Would they move the game to Mercedes Stadium? Would they just keep it there on campus? That'd be a question to ask. Number 6, Georgia, hosting Big 12 champion BYU in Athens, between the hedges. Number 7, Oregon, hosting number 10, Oklahoma, out in Autzen Stadium in Eugene. And this would be interesting. You and I have actually called this game before when they moved it from campus to Nissan Stadium. Number 8, Vanderbilt versus number 9, Ole Miss. Would they move the game, Gino, from campus because it's the college football playoff and say you have to go play the game at Nissan Stadium? I'm sure Ole Miss Rebel fans would appreciate that. I don't know that Vandy fans would, because we might have more Ole Miss fans there. But that could be – I really think we might see that happen, by the way, at the end of the year, where a team like Georgia Tech or a team like Vanderbilt, they may say, well, I don't know that we want to play a college football playoff game in your stadium. You have to move it somewhere else in your city. That could be an intriguing wrinkle to this.
Well, and something before this weekend that was discussed is if Miami makes the playoffs, there's a scheduling issue where essentially there's supposed to be a World Cup game in Hard Rock Stadium at the same time as the playoff game, and they're like, well, what happens then? Now, if that happens, I'm not sure where Miami plays, if they play at Tropical Park, the high school stadium, or what happens. But you know what? There's one question: is there still free queso up there in Nashville?
We did a game years ago, Ole Miss and Vanderbilt, and I think Ole Miss scored 60-plus points. If Vandy scored 21 in the game, they had a promotion where a local restaurant would offer free queso to everyone in the stadium, and everyone went wild when Ole Miss got a late fourth quarter touchdown to lose like 63-21 in the game. My, how things have changed. for the Vanderbilt Commodores. Now they're hosting College Game Day, and they're ranked in the top 10 in the country. Hey, what do you think is most shocking of these teams that are in the top 20 right now? Indiana, number 2 in the program that they've built. Georgia Tech is number 7 in the AP rankings this week. Vanderbilt is number 10. How about those 3 teams in the top 10?
I would say of that, Georgia Tech. Listen, people forget they split a national championship when I was in college, so they've been there before. I would say, to me, Indiana, obviously you think first basketball school, and Vanderbilt to be able to do it in the Southeastern Conference. I think that the Indiana would be the most shocking to me of how high they are, and then Vanderbilt would be a close second. But yeah, it's just different times. Like, can you get the right quarterback? Can you get the right group of players? Can you get transfers that come into your program and buy and believe and make it a great season? And that's what Cignetti's done at Indiana, and Vandy with Pavia just kind of jumped on his back and ridden that wave. And it's not just him. It's the entire program's investing, if you will. It's investing in transfers and getting players that can play right away. So I would say those are the two to me, the two best stories in college football this year.
If the committee were ranking the teams right now today, and again, I'm glad they don't, because this is so incomplete and so much is going to change. I do think their rankings would look considerably different than mine, and this is what I think the matchups would look like in that first round. I think you'd have South Florida at Georgia, BYU at Miami, Vanderbilt at Oregon, Ole Miss at Georgia Tech. Your buys would be Ohio State, Indiana, Alabama, and Texas A&M. But again, like we said, these teams are just past the midway mark of the season. A lot is going to change. I applaud the committee for waiting to November before they publish any rankings and really get our mind going about what the playoffs are going to look like.
With your rankings, so that would mean one ACC team, one Big 12 team, one Group of 5, 2 Big 10.
Ohio State, Indiana, and Oregon would be the third.
Oh, excuse me, 3 Big 10.
Yep.
And the rest SEC.
Alabama, Texas A&M, Georgia, Ole Miss, Vanderbilt. 5 SEC teams.
5 SEC teams. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's where it and listen, I think people need to realize, like, when they're talking about playoff expansion and they want an automatic 4.
Mm-hmm.
Penn State still doesn't, or excuse me, Penn State. The Big Ten doesn't get an automatic 4 in your rankings. That's why I would say I like the expansion of it, but I don't think you can have an automatic 4. Maybe 3 out of a conference, but I would.
You think that's too many for the SEC?
No, I was just thinking of it based on the sticking points of them expanding the playoff. And I wanted people to recognize of where what your rankings look like right now,
right,
and how many teams are from each conference.
Yeah, in these, if I'm predicting what the committee would do, I think that Miami and Georgia Tech would both be in from the ACC right now. You'd have one Big 12 team, the BYU, and then you'd have the Group of 5, South Florida. You'd have 4 SEC, and you have 3 Big 10. But here's the thing. These teams are going to beat, especially in the SEC, these teams are going to beat each other's brains in the rest of the season. Right. I'd be very surprised if you end up with 5 SEC teams because of what I just said there. I think that you're going to get a maximum of 4 because these teams are going to beat each other up. I'd be really surprised if you don't get 2 ACC. You're obviously at least going to get 1 from the Big 12. Texas Tech and BYU. Could there be 2? I think there's a chance there could be 2. And I think at minimum you're going to get 3 teams from the Big 10. Ohio State, Indiana, Oregon all look like they're in really good shape to be those 3 teams right now. But yeah, that's a good point, and that's going to change in the next in the next 6 weeks. Okay, we got to talk about these games. The games are great this week. We're going to get to them coming up next on Touchdown Radio Tailgate. Okay, just quickly to mention this. Gino made me start a new tradition over a decade ago. Shout out to Brent Musburger, who might have had something to do with this too. But, I'm having my late night cold beer after these games on Saturday night. And when I tabulated the results, accidentally gave myself a win for the Utah BYU game and Gino a loss. I picked Utah and lost. Gino picked BYU and won. I went 7-3 in the picks last week. Gino went 5-5. So I have a 1-game lead. I was down 1, but I'm only up 1 going into this week. Okay, real quickly.
God, I forgot about that. Was that Oklahoma, T?
I had the OU South Carolina
racing
game.
to the airport from Oklahoma.
I had the Oklahoma South Carolina. Oh, when you and I raced from the airport? Yes.
When Musburger, yeah.
Oh, no. That was Auburn. That was an
cooler.
Auburn game. We raced from Auburn to Atlanta. Yes. And as usual, Uncle Brent had to tuck us in as we went back up to our rooms. Wow, what a legend that guy is. Okay, Ole Miss at Oklahoma this week. South Florida at Memphis. Mizzou at Vandy. College Game Day is there. BYU is at Iowa State. Undefeated BYU at Iowa State this week. Texas is at Mississippi State. I'm excited to be there in Stark Vegas with cowbells ringing on the Longhorns. Texas A&M at LSU. Michigan at Michigan State. Just some of the games in week number 9. Which one are you most intrigued by?
I think I want to see Ole Miss Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen Ole Miss a bunch already this season in person. Oklahoma was the Texas game just a hiccup. Their offense hasn't looked the same since Mateer's injury. And I think Ole Miss, they just they got to figure it out on defense. I mean, it came down, they played well the entire game against Georgia, at least, toe to toe, and then they just made some glaring errors in the end of that game. So I'm very curious with that one. Heck, Indiana, UCLA and Indiana. UCLA's been on fire since they fired Foster. I think that I'm interested to see. Missouri Vanderbilt.
Mm-hmm.
I think Vandy's like one of those sneaky, really good SEC teams, and can Vanderbilt keep it up? I mean, I think if we look at if we think about Saban and all his great press conferences, how do you handle success? And I think it's very difficult in college football to handle success. And I'm curious to see how Vanderbilt handles this success and
it's a great point. It's a great point. Saban took a shot at the atmosphere at Vanderbilt and how it was hard to play there because it was always sleepy. And then Vandy went out and beat Alabama in Nashville. I'm sure Coach Saban will be reminded of that as he's on the set on College Game Day. But you're right. These Vanderbilt Commodores aren't used to having all the spotlight of College Game Day, and Diego Pavia is a Heisman candidate and all of that. So see how they handle that on the west end of Nashville against Eli Drinkwitz and the Missouri Tigers. We'll pick that game coming up in just a moment. 2 others I just want to mention real quickly that we should keep an eye on. One is the game that you're calling, Oregon and Wisconsin. I worry about Coach Fickell. You talk about these coaches that are getting fired during the season. Number 6, Oregon's playing 2-5 Wisconsin, and Wisconsin doesn't look like the effort level has been as high as it should be. And that's something that we need to watch out for, Gino, as we continue to watch these games each week. And the other is Auburn at Arkansas. Coach Freeze and the Auburn Tigers have lost 4 straight games, and you could absolutely argue they could have won all 4 of them. And now they have to go to Bobby Petrino in Arkansas on Saturday. And if they lose this, and they're 3-5, I'm a little worried about Coach Freeze's future too. And I hate saying that, but that's just the reality of where we are right now.
Well, and it's interesting. Saban's comments is that firing is a product of pay for play and the pressure. And listen, Auburn has had that. I mean, really, when Tuberville was there, when they, sent the private jet to Petrino, didn't get Petrino, I mean, the boosters have been meddling in coaching decisions for a lot longer than this season. And I think that, listen, the stakes are high, and I think that there's no question. I think that, Auburn is a job where, they invest in the program, they have great facilities, and they expect to win. And it's one of the best game day environments in college football. And there's no question they have not played up to par. It's year 3. And that's usually when, I guess Auburn, I was thinking, like, what do they say, the 7-year itch for your marriage? It's kind of a 3-year itch for every head coach that comes in there at Auburn. And then, with Fickell, the interesting thing is, so Fickell signs a 7-year contract when he comes from Cincinnati. At the end of the last 2 seasons, he has had that deal extended by a year. I'm not sure why you would extend a coach. If you give him a 7-year contract, that's more than enough time to get the program going, and then has a losing season, yet you're extended. So let's maybe the administrations in college football need to kind of look in the mirror going, should we be doing this?
Good point.
So, but it's kind of, it's just head scratching, some of the decisions, whether it's coaching, whether it's administration with coaching and that, but all of those coaches are on the hot seat. I mean, Wisconsin hasn't scored a point in 14 quarters. So
wow,
that's pretty bad.
You have the game 7:00 Eastern time on FS1 and also on Touchdown Radio on Saturday night. Let's pick some contests coming up next here on Touchdown Radio Tailgate. All right, Gino, we're going to go rapid fire here. I've got a 1-game lead on you as we go into these matchups in week number 9. Number 8, Ole Miss at number 13, Oklahoma. 12 o'clock kick on ABC. Who you got?
Wrong team favorite. I'm taking Ole Miss.
Agreed with you. I was hoping you would pick Ole Miss there. I'd pick OU there. I just saw OU, and I think John Mateer is a warrior. I love their defense. I just don't know that they have enough bells and whistles offensively, and I think Ole Miss does. Next, number 18, South Florida is at Memphis. This is a 12 o'clock kick on ESPN2. And honestly, I thought there was a real chance College Game Day was going to be there for this one. But then, of course, Memphis lost. And I think that's why they're coming to Nashville instead. South Florida is a 4.5-point favorite on the road against Memphis. And I like the Bulls to win the game.
I would agree with you there. The fighting Kevin Patrick's on South Florida's D-line. Golesh, I think, is probably going to be one of the hot names to replace one of those Power 5 jobs after the season. But I think if he can stay focused, I like South Florida.
Next up, number 15, Missouri is a 2.5-point dog at number 10, Vanderbilt. This is a 3:30 kick on ESPN. The Doors are going to win this, Gino. Mizzou has done a great job to get to this point this season, and puts up a lot of points. I don't like their defense that much, though. I like Vandy in this one.
I've picked against Vandy and been wrong. I'm going to pick against them again. I'm taking Mizzou.
Oh, wow. The other black and gold comes into the house. MIZ beats Vandy there. Number 11, BYU is at Iowa State. This game in the great state of Iowa, of course, is a 3:30 kick on Fox. Iowa State, the Clones are 3-point favorites against undefeated Cougs. Who you like?
I liked BYU last week, and they did me right. So I'm going to still ride BYU. I think Iowa State's got too many injuries and not enough firepower now with those injuries.
Not so fast, my friend. Matt Campbell and the Clones win it, and in Coach Sataki's perfect season, Iowa State in that one. Number 23, Illinois at Washington. This is a 3:30 kick on Big Ten Network. UW favored by 4.5. Wrong team favored. I'm going Illini on the road.
100% disagree. Boys in the boat. They're taking it. University
Boys in the
of Washington.
boat, baby.
And by the way, Touchdown Radio might have Washington in 2 weeks, so we might be rooting for
there you
one
go.
side.
I like that. I'm not picking this one. Number 22, Texas at Mississippi State, 4:15 kick on SEC Network. I am calling it, Gino. Texas about a touchdown favorite.
Just Jekyll and Hyde with Texas. Are they going to put it all together against the Cowbells afternoon game? You know what? I'll take Texas.
Okay, take Texas in that one.
I was painful. It's kind of like last week when we were debating taking Arkansas against Texas A&M. This was my tough one.
Number 3, A&M at number 20, LSU, 7:30 kick on ABC. I think the season's on the line for Brian Kelly. His future might be on the line, which is crazy to me. I like LSU on Saturday night in Death Valley.
Not so fast, my friend. I'm taking the other side.
Wow.
Texas A&M goes on the road. I don't think LSU. I think offensively they cannot run the ball. And I think Texas A&M defense is just going to shut them down again, force them to throw.
Man.
And being one-sided is not a way to win a football game.
Number 25, Michigan at Michigan State, 7:30 on NBC. I'll take the Wolverines in hostile territory.
Yeah, no question there. I don't think Michigan State's got enough firepower to hang with Michigan. Big win last week.
Tough trip to make with Torretta from Detroit to East Lansing, by the way. Still not over it. Number 24, Arizona State hosting the Houston Cougars, 8 o'clock kick on ESPN2. I'll take the Sun Devils at home.
Right there with you.
Okay, and then we have a bonus game. This is our 10th game. Minnesota 5-2 at 5-2 Iowa, 3:30 on CBS. No more SEC on CBS. You're getting 5-2 Minnesota at 5-2 Iowa. Who you got?
I'm going to take the home team there. I'm going to take Iowa, even though PJ Fleck had a good performance against Nebraska last week. But I'm going to take Iowa at home.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Coach Ferentz and the Hawkeyes have such a solid program.
I thought we were going to get a bonus pick blue against Big Orange. I might have gone blue.
No, we're just going to stick with these this week. With Tennessee, Kentucky is 7:45 on SEC Network, but you can take Coach Stoops, but we're not going to count it this week. All right, Mr. Torretta, enjoy it out there in Eugene. Encourage everybody to listen to Touchdown Radio here on SiriusXM this weekend for Gino's call of Oregon and Wisconsin. Watch a little SEC Network if you're at home in front of a TV at 4:15 with Texas and Mississippi State. Always fun to do this show each and every week. And next week, I think we're going to have a clearer picture of who the teams are that belong in the college football playoff. And certainly we'll talk about that next Thursday. Thanks to Gino Torretta. I'm Taylor Zarzour. We always appreciate you listening to Touchdown Radio Tailgate here on SiriusXM Channel 84.